sewing tutorial. My name is Anne-Sophie and I'm the person behind Sewing with Solana, and today we're making a dress that's very special to me. It's the Sterre Dress, and I never used to like wearing maxi dresses or maxi skirts, never wore them. And then I just made this dress by accident, kind of, because I had a flight to go to Bali in the afternoon. My boyfriend was living in Australia, I was living in Spain, and we decided to meet in Bali for a week. And I had enough time in the morning to make something, or like to do something, so I decided to make a dress, and I just wanted to make like a super flowy, loose-fitting dress that I could wear after the beach, and I wanted to make it as a mini dress, but I accidentally made it way too short, like it was more like a tank top. So I decided to add another section of fabric to it. So that's what I did, just because I didn't want the dress and all the work that I have done so far go to waste. So I was like, oh, okay, I'll just make a maxi dress out of it. And then I also made it again into a mini dress, and I brought both dresses with me to go on holidays. And when I wore the maxi dress for the first time, I felt so beautiful and I loved the dress so much. So when I came back from that holiday, I decided to include the design into the collection of my clothing brand. But to me, it's just such a beautiful dress to wear when you go to the markets in Europe or in Australia, and you can dress it up or down. You can dress it up and wear it for a night out, for a dinner, or just wear it casually with some flip-flops during the day. So yeah, and it's actually, some people ask me how I always come up with the names for my dresses, and most of my dresses are named after friends, and so is this one, named after my friend Sterre. But yeah, I'm going to be making this dress with muslin cotton, and I would recommend you to use the same fabric, just because in my opinion it's the nicest fabric for this dress. I've made it also before out of 100% viscose, which also looked nice, but I still preferred it with muslin cotton. You just want to make sure that you use a fabric that's not too thick, not too stiff, because we're going to gather a lot of fabric together, and if you use a fabric that's really thick, it's going to look super bulky, and you want the dress to flow when you walk. So either use muslin cotton, viscose, or I think you could also use a linen and viscose blend. And I printed mine out in A4. You can also print it out in A0, or if you're in the US, in US leather. Just make sure when you print it out, you set your scale to 100%, and I would always just recommend printing the first page. Check the measuring box that's on the first page. If it measures correctly, you can go ahead and print the remaining pages. And then once you have all the pages printed out, we can now glue them together, cut out the sewing pattern, cut out the fabric, and then we can start sewing. And I think this is like a fairly easy dress to sew. It's just going to take a bit longer just because there's a lot of fabric. And yeah, it always just takes longer sewing a maxi dress than it would take sewing a mini dress. And I'm just going to explain to you everything as we go. You need a safety pin or a loop turner, because we have two very long straps and you need to flip them the other way around. So either you can do it with a safety pin or you can use a loop turner. Yeah, so this is what a loop turner looks like, otherwise a safety pin. And now I'm going to stop talking and we can start sewing. So when you print out the sewing pattern, just make sure that you print it at a scale of 100%, and I would always recommend you to just print the first page, and then you can either check the 5 centimeters times 5 centimeter box or the 2 inch times 2 inch. If it measures correctly, then you can go ahead and print the remaining pages. And then the way to put the sewing pattern together, we start, like there's always a letter and a number on each page, and it goes A1, A2, A3 and so on, B1, B2, B3, C1, C2, so all the A's go down here, B's, C's, what comes after C, D and so on. And to put them together, we're just going to start with this one page, and as you can see, there's a dotted line over here and then also a dotted line here, and after A1 comes A2, and you put it right where the dotted line is, and then also this dotted line on the side here needs to line up, and then you can glue them together. Or what I usually always do, and what I'm going to do for all the other pages, I'm first going to put everything in place roughly, and then I go page by page gluing it together, just so that I know where everything needs to go. And then we can cut out our sewing pattern. And when you cut it out, here is a size chart, not the size chart, but the line guide. And either you can print it out in color as I did, or if you print it out in black and white, each size has a different dotted line, and I'm gonna make mine in a size small. So here's what it looks like when you put it roughly. It goes from A1 to A6, B1 to B6, C1 to C6, and then we have D2 to D6, and E2 and E3. So here we have A2 and then comes A3, and I put it right where the dotted line is, and then this dotted line needs to line up, and then automatically all the other lines will also line up. And when you cut out your fabric, here where it says fold, it means that you need to fold your fabric in half and place this part where it says fold on the folded edge. And here you can see those notches marked. And this is where you need to make a little cut into the fabric, because this will indicate where the straps go. And then also here, cut 2 on fold means you need to cut it out 2 times with the fabric folded right here. Okay, so when you purchase the sewing pattern, you will also get a file with some general information about the sewing patterns, and there's a size guide included where you can take your measurements and then you can cut out your right size. I'm going to cut mine out in a size small. With this sewing pattern, the main measurement you should focus on is your bust measurement, because the skirt is super big and flowy anyways. Okay, so here's everything that we have cut out. We have 2 long straps. Then we have 2 back pieces for the top of the dress, like this. And then we have 2 front pieces for the top of the dress. What the hell? I don't remember that I cut them out 4 times. That is so creepy. Okay, you only need to cut them out twice. Then we have the front of the first layer of the skirt. Here we have the first layer of the back of the skirt, and as you can see here, it's going down a bit. So make sure to remember that this is the top of the first layer of the back. So I'm just going to stick a needle in here to remember that it's the top. And then we have 2 times the second layer, and we use the same sewing pattern piece for the front and the back. They're super long. And the first thing we're going to do now is we're going to take the first strap and we're going to fold it in half. And then we're going to sew. It depends a bit how wide you want your strap to be. I'm going to sew with a 1 centimeter seam allowance away from the folded edge. You can either do it with your normal sewing machine and then trim the excess seam allowance off, but I'm just going to do it straight with my overlock machine, because then it's cutting the seam allowance off already. So yeah, we're just going to start with 1. I'm going to sew with a 1 centimeter seam allowance, and then I'm going to do the same to my other strap, wherever it may be. Here it is. And then I'll show you what to do next. Okay, now I take my loop turner and I'm just pushing it through one of the openings. Push it through the fabric here, and then I flip it the other way. if you don't have a loop turner, you can just take a normal safety pin and you push it through the fabric here, then you close it, and then this will just take much longer, but then you just push it all the way through until it comes out on the other side again. Like this works just as good, but it's just much slower. And now what we need to do is, we're just going to do it to one of the straps. We need to cut off 6 centimeters. And then I'm just going to take this and cut off the same amount of the other strap. And now we take one of our back pieces and then we put the other one on top. With this fabric there's no good and bad side. If you were working with a fabric with a print, for example, you would want to make sure that the two good sides are facing each other. And now we're going to sew along the top here, and here where the notches are, we're going to take the 6 centimeter cut off straps here and we're going to place them in between. I personally find it really hard pinning those thin straps in here, so I'm just going to start sewing here, and then when the notch comes, then I'm going to place it in between. So I'm not going to pin them in between, but if you want to, you can pin them in place. But yeah, so one of the 6 centimeter pieces, you first fold it in half and then you place it where the notch is, and then you match the other notch up and you do the same on the other notch here as well. And now I make sure that the needle is down, then I lift the foot up just so I can get close to the notch. And now you can cut this little bit off here. And now we can just put it to the side for now. And now we take the front and we're going to place one piece in front of us, and then we take the second one. And here again, if you work with a fabric where there's a good and bad side, make sure that the two good sides are facing each other. And now we want to sew from here, then across here and down here again. And again, here where our notches are, we're going to place our long straps now. So I'll start sewing here, then I go up here, and then I'm going to place my strap in here. I'm not going to pin mine in place either, just because I find it a bit hard pinning the straps in there. But what I'm going to do this time, I'm just going to stick a few needles in there anyways. But then when it comes to the notches, I'm just going to stop sewing for a second, grab my straps and put them where they need to go. So again, we sew from here, across here, and then down to here. And here where our notches are, we need to place our straps. And I'm gonna cut the little pieces here off again. And I'm also gonna cut a little bit of the corner off, just because when we flip it the other way around, it looks nicer when there's less fabric built up in the corner. And now we're gonna go to our iron and we're gonna press the back flat. So we're gonna flip it with the good side facing us. And then it needs to look like this. And we're just gonna iron it and press it flat. Okay, now that we have flipped it, we can also cut off this and just make it a straight line here. And then we take our front piece and we leave the front piece with the bad side facing us and we open it up. And now we sandwich the back piece in between here. So we're gonna sew the front and the back on the sides together. And the back is already with the good side facing out, and the front we leave it as it is. And now we can sew along here, and then we can also sew along here. And then we can flip everything with the good side facing out. And now we go over to our iron and press everything flat. Okay, so this is what it looks like now. I always like to tie my straps together. Otherwise I find it a bit annoying when there's always those two super long straps flying around. But it's looking good so far. And now we can put it to the side for a bit and start working on the skirt of the dress. Okay, so now we're gonna take the fabric piece of the first back layer, and just make sure, as you can see, like this is the bottom and it's straight here, but here at the top part there's this curve, and just make sure that you stick a needle or like make a mark where the top is, so you don't confuse the top and the bottom. And then I take the front first layer and place it on top. And now we can sew the sides here together. And then also on the other side here. And first I'm going to sew it with my normal sewing machine, and then we can press the seam open and then we can overlock it. So now we do the same to the second layer of the skirt, and if you would have a good and a bad side, you would want to make sure that the two good sides are facing each other, and you place them on top of each other, and then first you sew one side together, and then you do the same to the other side. And again, I'm first going to do it with a normal sewing machine, then press the seam open, and then I'm going to overlock it. So now we need to gather the fabric together, and to do that we need to make some changes to the setting of our sewing machine. And I'm just going to start now with the second layer of the skirt, and it doesn't matter what the top and what the bottom is because they're identical, so just choose whatever you want and stick to it. And also I would recommend you not doing one long stitch all the way around. I would recommend to separate it into the front and the back, because then instead of just having two ends where you can pull on the long thread to gather the fabric together, you have four ends, and it just makes it easier to gather the fabric together. But yeah, I'm going to show you how to do it, and then just follow me. You need to have a straight stitch. Then I change my stitch length to 4, and I move my needle to the right. Okay, now just make sure that you have quite a few centimeters of thread hanging off here. And now I'm gonna start sewing close to one of our side seams here. And it's very important that you don't front and back stitch, and you want to sew relatively close to the edge. That's also why I moved my needle to the right. And now we're just going to sew a straight line until we reach our other side seam. And now that we get close to the other side seam, I'm going to stop 2 centimeters in front of it. Don't front and back stitch again, and you want to make sure that you take quite a few centimeters of thread with you. Then you can cut it off. Then I'm just going to pull on it again to have enough thread before we start sewing again. So we finished here, and now I'm going to start sewing here again. going to do exactly the same to the first layer, but this time it's important where the top and where the bottom is, and the top is where the curved line of the back piece is. So as you can see here, it goes down like this, so that is the top part, and this is where we're going to make the long stitch now. So now we take the front of our dress, and right now the inside and the outside, they're identical, so just choose whichever side you prefer. And then I just lay it in front of me, and we have here one side seam, and then we have one side seam, this is the front, and then here's the back. And what we're going to do now, we're going to take the first layer of the skirt, and you just want to make sure that the back of the first layer and the back of the top are matching, like are lining up. So I'm just going to make sure that the inside of the first layer is facing me. This is the outside, which is the good side. And now I'm going to line up this seam with this side seam here, pin it in place. And again, here this is the back of the top, and here's the back of the first layer where there was the curve. So back, back, front, front. And now what you want to do is you want to pull on the threads here and make the first layer of the skirt the same length as the top part of the dress. So just gather the fabric together, spread it out equally. And then if you want to, you can pin everything in place a little bit. And then we go to our sewing machine, and then it's important that you change your settings back to normal, and then we sew everything together, and then we're going to do the same with the second layer, and then we can overlock it. Here is what it's gonna look like so far. And now we're gonna do exactly the same to the second layer. Now it doesn't matter which side you pin on here because the second layers, like the front and back, are identical. But now we have the good side of the first layer laying in front of us, and then we take the second layer, and you want to make sure that the good sides are facing each other. And I'm gonna stick a needle in here, make sure the side seams are lining up. Pin it together, and then I'm gonna do the same to the other side seam. Just make sure here that your fabric doesn't get twisted. And now we're going to gather the second layer together so it has the same length as the first layer. And once you have pinned everything in place, we can go to our sewing machine and sew everything together. Okay, so now we are nearly finished. What we need to do now is we need to overlock what we have just sewn. So you just start at any random point and sew in one circle, and then you do it again for the other section. And then you should try on your dress to figure out how long you want yours to be. I just tried mine on just because my camera was charging. Oh, it's always so annoying with this camera, the battery goes empty so quickly. But anyways, once you have tried it on and once you have figured out how long or short you want yours to be, if you want it to be like touching the floor, a bit shorter or whatever, figure it out, and then you can either just have the bed side of the dress facing you and then you fold it inwards once and then you fold it in again. Or if you would want to make it quite a few centimeters shorter, you could also cut a little bit of fabric off again. Completely up to you. But first we're going to overlock it and then we're going to hem it. And I always take this needle to hide the end of my overlock seam. And first I push it through here for a few centimeters. Push this through here, pull it out, and now you can cut the rest off. And then when it comes to hemming your dress, you just figure out for yourself how wide your hem should be. I'm just going to fold mine up a little bit, like this, and then again. And then I'm going to stick a pin in here. I'm not going to pin everything exactly in place just because it would take quite some time. So I'm just going to pin a few needles in here, and then I'm just going to fold as I sew. So we are now finished with our Sterre dress. I love mine already so much. I'm going to show you what mine looks like in a few seconds. I want to go down to the beach and take some nice photos for sunset. So yeah, I just want to say thank you for watching this video. Thank you if you have purchased the sewing pattern. It always makes me so happy when you tag me in your photos and videos. Oh, it's the best feeling ever. So please send me photos of you wearing your dress. And if you have any questions, if any steps were unclear, just leave a comment or send me a message on Instagram or send me an email. And I really hope I see you at my next sewing tutorial again. Goodbye!